This will be the last time you see the setup like this. That's right, everything has got to go. The reason why is because afterwards, we're going to reinstall everything, but it's going to be even better than before. Now you might be thinking, how is that possible? It seems like we're already making the most of the space here. Well, believe it or not, 2003 called and they told me that I can have this right here. So what exactly is this? Well, it's a new addition to the setup here, and I realize that the iPhone 4 camera may not be the best camera to use in this case, but you know what? We're going to use it anyways because it is Steve approved, and well, I haven't used the iPhone 4 in a while here, so we're going to make the most of it and see what we can actually do with this thing. But this right here is an office computer desk from around 2003. Now the reason I say that is because the one singular date code that this has is from 2003. Now, I could not find any information about this at all. My best guess is that this is from like an office type store from around the early 2000s. And well, it does match the early 2000s theme here because, well, I mean, it may not be a beige setup, but this will definitely go with the other computers that we have in the setup, at least from around this time period. So yeah, all of these accessories will go really well with this, and it still looks to be in basically brand new condition. Now obviously we kind of have to remove everything here because the setup was optimized for the way it is right now. So what we're going to do is we're going to take everything out one by one, and my thinking about this is actually installing this right next to the Y2K setup. So basically have these two side by side. The left side will go a bit more to the left. This side will go a bit more to the right. We do have enough space to make it work, but it's going to take a lot of rearranging, and it'll also require a whole bunch of work because off to the left here, it's kind of a mess, and I'll try to deal with that off camera. But before we start with this, why not actually take a closer look at the desk itself? So this is a 3-tiered computer desk. Now the first level here is obviously intended for a desktop computer. Now it'll probably not be ideal for something like a G5 or a Mac Pro. Initially I was thinking about using this for this area right here, but I think it just makes more sense to leave this as it is and use it as a separate setup. So obviously if it's from around 2003, it should be more than perfectly able to handle computers from around the same time period. So apart from something like a G5, it should be fine in terms of the weight capacity. The second level here is obviously intended for the monitors, the keyboard, and the mouse. Now, I'm sure we can make it work with a multi-monitor setup. We just have to be a bit creative with how we arrange everything. But the first level here is obviously intended for a desktop. But that's not where you would put the keyboard because you have this tray right here. So you would put a keyboard, a mouse, and when you're not using it, you can just put it away. On the back side here, you can see that this is actually lower from the rest of the setup. Now my thinking about this is that this is so you can actually have the monitor at like a standard height and you don't actually have to see the stands. So basically like this would be on the lower portion, but you can easily look at the display without a problem. Now I don't necessarily know why it has multi-adjustment levels on this side, and this one is just stationary. Now if you change it from any other orientation apart from this, it would either be tilting up or down, which doesn't really make too much sense, but I guess it really just depends on the monitor. So if you're at the setup here, you can see that the displays would be at a good height here, but you don't have to see all the nonsense underneath, and I'm sure it can also help out with cable management. I do have a selection of different monitors that we can use here. So at this point you have a first level, a second, well, we also have a third level right here. And not only that, it's kind of like 2-in-1 because you have two shelves. So the top here, you have the same wood type of finish as with the rest of the desk. And then you also have another metal shelf here. So this was probably intended for like CD storage or some kind of storage like that back in the day. But with this, we have a lot of options here. In fact, we could probably move an airport onto the top here so we have even better coverage. I will probably still use it for some CD storage, maybe for some CD installers, but otherwise extra storage is always nice to have. Now this is not necessarily a downside, but it is something that you should pay attention to. This area in the back here, if you don't do anything with it, it's just going to be wasted space. Now I don't necessarily think I'm going to put like another PC tower or something like that in the back, but it does seem like a good spot to organize cables. And because this entire thing is actually on wheels, you can easily adjust and move this out of the way. So if we have this in the setup here, we could easily take it out of the setup and do some cable management because we can have easy access to this area right here. If we can try and maximize our cable nonsense to become an organized cable nonsense, that's still better than nothing. The best part about this is that I can actually organize cables the right way. So I have some Velcro cable ties here, and initially I was just going to use these on this area right here, but then we also have this here, so yeah, I'm going to try and make the most of this. Now, I don't have a ton of these, but I know that they're going to be a lot more helpful than whatever is going on right now. Yeah, it's not looking the best recently, but it's all going to be for the better here because we have some additional improvements and upgrades that we can install. So I'll bring you guys along for the journey. Obviously, as I start to remove stuff one by one, I'll show you the progress, and afterwards it's going to be a lot different, but a million times better. I also cleaned up the entirety of the desk itself so it is dust free, and I also disassembled and reassembled the entire thing because in some areas it was almost going to fall apart. It's always funny to see a full setup go to just this. So what do you have in your setup? My Macintosh. Well, what else? No, that's it. It's just the Mac. Now this is truly the setup of all time. So check this out. Even more space. Now how awesome is that? So it's been a little bit, and as you can see, I've been busy here. So even though it does still look pretty similar to how it used to be, you can clearly see that we've got a lot more room to work with. Now with this part of the setup, if it looks pretty much identical except for the fact that we are of course missing some components, that's because it is. The bigger change happened on the other side of this, where I had to rearrange some stuff so that way we could push it further to the left. But as you can see, it worked out well because we actually have more space now. The other cool part about this is that we also have additional lighting in the corner now. So before, we did have some light, but nowhere near as much as we see now. And especially on something like the iPhone 4, it really does help out with the video quality. We do also have the 90s beige filing cabinet in the same spot because it is actually very useful when it comes to actual things like office supplies, batteries, really anything that might need to be used once in a while, and it does also match the beige setup, and it really helps out with that 90s office feeling. Now even though this area has been moved over, it's still going to be the same with the Dell right there, the flat panel on this side, and the beige CRT on this side. The new desk is actually ever so slightly smaller compared to the Y2K setup, but here you can see that we now have enough space to work with, and even if it wasn't for the desk, this alone actually makes it a lot easier to work with both of these setups here because now we can actually access this from the side, which previously we were not able to do because obviously they were right next to each other. So even just this improvement makes it a lot easier to work with. And because the new desk actually has wheels, this means that we can easily remove it whenever we want because it has wheels. Now as for the power side of things, I still need to figure out what the best new solution will be because this does work, but considering we now have this setup further to the right, we either need a longer power cable or to figure out a new power solution. The Belkin Surgemaster 2 is of course going to stay in the setup here. It's awesome, it's beige, and it's from the year 2000. Now previously the other thing we had plugged in here was the AirPort itself, but if we plug the AirPort into something like the Surgemaster here, that means we have an additional outlet that we can use for another power strip. Now the Y2K setup is obviously perfect because, first of all, this is the peak of Apple computing. It's all acrylic, it's all clear, and we even have a matching desk. But of course, apart from that, we are going to have to change some of the behind the scenes things in terms of the wiring for the G5 and the Mac Pro because, well, it's obviously not next to an outlet anymore, at least as close as it used to be. But the additional space that we do have will make it even easier to clean the entire setup because Around the back there, it does get fairly dusty, especially if you don't move the monitor. But in terms of the actual airport that used to be on top of the G5, now it did not make a lot of sense to have two airports right next to each other, but now that we have even more space to work with, it kinda does make sense to have two of them. So I am glad to have those two available, but we're just going to have to figure out how to actually make the most of them. At the Mac Pro area, we are going to have the same arrangement in terms of the two monitors, the Mac Pro over here, and of course the Hackintosh off to the side. But we are also going to focus on real cable management, which is going to be awesome because, let's be honest, before it was a complete disaster, and especially at the end, it was even worse than before. But it's all for a good reason because I was testing out some new cables that we can actually install. We have also made some improvements to the desk setup itself because, as you can see, now it actually looks a bit nicer in terms of, if you don't notice it, that's a good thing. Previously, I basically just had some spare scraps of cardboard and it was just enough to make it into a stable surface here because there is a small height difference between this desk and of course the shelving. But this is the super cardboard that I've used before for the panel system on the other setup, and if we take an iPhone here, we can see that it's perfectly level. So we have a nice flat surface to work with. It's a million times better than before. Now we just need to start setting it up again. Now that is awesome. So the Hi-Fi system, the Hackintosh, the Mac Pro, the Y2K setup, the second Y2K setup, the Windows 10 setup, and of course the future beige setup because, well, we still need to set that up. But at this point it feels like I'm recording something in 2010 with my iPhone 4 because, I mean, let's face it, there's nothing modern in this area except for Windows 10. And who's counting that? The Mac Pro setup is back in action. If we look underneath the desk, you can see that there are no cables to be seen. Okay, obviously you can still see them, but it's way better than before because previously we had just a whole bunch of cables here. Half of them were behind the Mac Pro to try to make it look a bit nicer, but it was just a complete mess. Now obviously if you're using the setup, it's not super visible, but now it somewhat resembles a proper desk setup. Now I'm using the pre-existing cables here, so I'm sure it could be even better than how it is right now, but this is my first attempt at trying to organize all this mess, and I gotta say, considering we have all the extra hi-fi gear and the Hackintosh, that I really haven't done anything in terms of organizing its cables, it is way better than before, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. As for the desk setup itself, in terms of the accessories, we have this monitor plugged into the Mac Pro, but we have this one plugged into the Hackintosh because even though the Hackintosh has a lot of USB ports, it is nice to have some easily accessible because the only real easily accessible ones on the system itself are two on the front here. So we have extra USB on this display. And as for the mouse and keyboard for the Mac Pro, we are going to be using this Dell keyboard, which I've restored in a previous video. And we're going to continue to use this Microsoft mouse for now. Why did I switch from the Microsoft keyboard? I just felt like using this one for now. I've also organized the keyboard and mouse cable with another cable organizer, and we have it plugged into the monitor itself. So all in all, we're actually only using one USB port on the system itself, which is awesome. There's always going to be room for improvement in pretty much any one of these setups here because cable management is always going to be a thing. I'm sure we can spend an entire video on just that topic alone, and by the end, there's still going to be stuff that we can further improve upon. So for the Y2K setup, I think it makes the most amount of sense to have the G5 where it used to be on the right side. We can easily plug it into Ethernet with the Mac Pro airport here. As for power, of course, as this is an ADC display, it can carry power, video, and USB. So cable management is probably going to be the cleanest on this setup. So we only really need to supply the Power Mac with power because, I mean, it's the main computer, it obviously needs power. But I think we're also going to move the Belkin SurgeMaster onto the new desk itself. Now, I don't know where we're going to put it yet, but it means that both of these setups here, this one and this one, can use that power strip, and we can have a separate one for the remaining setups on this side. The Power Mac G5 is of course Steve approved. What that means is that if you want to get this system up and running, all you have to do is plug in the ADC display, plug in the Power Mac, and just like that, you're going to have a usable desktop in no time. Of course, you also have all of these extra connections if you have accessories or other things you want to plug in, such as Ethernet, which we are going to do, of course, with a gray Ethernet cable because it looks awesome and it matches the plastics on the G5. But this is pretty much the closest that a professional desktop can be plug and play. From the last clip to now, obviously we have the G5 the way it used to be, but it's also been a little while since that last recording because I've been trying to figure out how exactly we should make use of the new desk area. The first thing that we installed on the new desk is the airport. Now this one is the same one that used to be on top of the G5 here, so now we have the extra space on the G5 itself, but the point is, because we had the airport previously over here, it made sense to use this airport for this system over here and for other PC towers that will eventually be installed over here. But considering the G5 is now closer to the new airport that we've installed with the Mac Pro, this one now serves as the access point for everything over here, including whatever we install on the desk itself. Considering we're starting off with a fresh slate here because, it's a new setup and all, even though the airport itself has power, you can see that we don't have any cables at all. So I'm going to try and make it look as nice as possible while working on the setup because so far it has paid off really well, and even though you can see the cables from this side, it's still way better than how it would be if I did not spend any time on this at all. So as you can imagine, we'd have like one Ethernet cable here, the power cable, and if you add other cables, then yeah, it really starts to add up. But the airport here is on top because, well, I guess it makes sense for a wireless access point, and at the same time I have long enough Ethernet cables where it can easily go down to the setups here and here without any issue at all. When we previously had the airport on top of the G5, it did actually help out with keeping the thermals down because, well, the G5 is a solid piece of metal. In some ways, we're actually keeping the trend of having the airport on a metal frame because apart from the work surfaces, this is a metal desk, and not only that, the shelf here has the advantage of ventilation. So for the first time, we actually have ventilation on every single side of the airport, which is awesome to see. It's been a while since the airport was installed here, so I've been keeping an eye on the temperatures, and it's working out just fine. Just like with the airport, I also spent some time trying to figure out where exactly the Belkin SurgeMaster would make the most amount of sense to use. And as you can see, we kept it simple because this is honestly the best spot for this. Initially, I thought about having it on the shelf itself, and I guess it kind of makes sense, but from a space standpoint, it doesn't, because unless you're using a Mac Mini, it's nice to have the entirety of the shelf for a PC tower. It also really doesn't make sense to have it anywhere else on the desk or somewhere that's hard to reach, because having this right here means that we can easily plug in anything that we might need to use, whether it be a laptop or another accessory, really just anything. It's all easily accessible right here, and because we do have enough cable length, we can also remove the desk, because obviously we have the wheels here, and easily access the outlet itself if we have to unplug something, change cable management, and in general just improve the area. Now the Belkin is the new power distribution center for the new desk as well as the G5 area. This leaves us with this area needing a new power supply, and as you can see, we have a new power supply. But we're going to talk about this later on. As for this, you can see that I've also made use of the space of this shelf in the back. Now this is obviously just for adding extra support and structure to the desk. It's actually a very good size for the power supply on the airport. So the only unorganized cable mess of the airport is the actual outlet here. And it's really not that bad in the first place because it's easy to access. But what do we actually use with the new desk? Considering how easy it is to work with it, I thought it would actually make a very nice testing area. So we could set up a PC tower or really just any system, Macintosh, connect it up to this area, and test it out. Now, we also have the option of leaving said system in the setup here, but it is going to be nice to use because having the keyboard tray means that I can easily leave a keyboard and mouse configured, but also have all of this free area on top for using a laptop. I've already tested this out with a laptop, and I can confirm that it's very nice to use, it's convenient, and especially if you're working on something like an iOS device alongside the system, even though it doesn't look like a crazy large desk as compared to the other ones here, this still provides a lot of space. Now, even though CRT monitors were still widely used in 2003, you just have to look at this and see that this is not optimized for a CRT display because, well, yeah, this is obviously intended for an LCD flat panel because clearly it's just not going to support a larger CRT here. Even though it does technically have the space for it, you definitely need to add some extra reinforcement before you even begin to think about installing a CRT. Now, fortunately, this is not a problem because I do have plenty of LCD monitors that are just sitting around doing nothing, and I do have a very interesting monitor to use here. Even though it doesn't necessarily match the silver theme 100%, I still think it's going to be a fantastic addition because up until now, I really haven't used this display, and it's just going to be super awesome to have in the setup here. Now, before deciding on the final display to use in this area, I was testing out with a variety of different panels, such as this Dell display, multiple widescreen and 4x3 displays. So first off, even though this display does match with the silver theme, we just have a lot of wasted space up above. Now, we do have the option of actually adjusting the frame here, so we can make this shelf go lower than how it is right now because the frame does have provisions for it. Now, I could do that, but I have a better solution, and it uses another display. Now, as for having multiple displays here, you can technically use it in that way, but best case scenario, if you have two 4x3 displays, they're going to have to be set at an angle, which is not super ideal because it'll be blocked by the frame itself. I know, it's awesome. A beige LCD which fits perfectly in the setup here. This is honestly perfect. It's a Samsung beige display from 2002, and as you can see, it's almost as if this frame from 2003 was made for LCD panels made around the same time period. So this is basically the PC equivalent of the Apple Cinema display with the white desk here. It just goes so well because the beige actually matches the wood finish, and even though we do have the gray silver frame, it still actually matches really well. And up until now, like I said, I have not really used this display. I know it does work, but it's going to be fantastic for PC towers as well as Macintosh systems because we still have the sticker on top here. And you know what it says? Macintosh and Sun compatibility. Now, first off, this is an awesome sticker. Defy the ordinary, but that's cool to know. I don't have any Sun systems, but I guess if we do, we have a compatible display right here. Now, like I said, it's a Samsung LCD, specifically model number 760V TFT. High value 17-inch TFT LCD monitor. Samsung Digital. Everyone's invited with a very small trademark logo. But yeah, this is an awesome sticker to see. We have 1280 by 1024 native resolution, so it is ever so slightly newer as compared to the early LCD panels, so it'll still provide a decent image. And we also have an interesting emissions sticker, which is cool to see. And here it is again, SyncMaster 760 VTFT. We have all of these options here, including auto adjustment, exit for the menus. We have brightness right there available with physical controls, as well as a menu option, and of course the power button in the center, and the Samsung logo off to the left. It is just a VGA panel, but it's not going to be a problem considering I use VGA all the time. So we're going to have this permanently installed in the setup here because, I mean, it just looks awesome, and having this right alongside the cinema display is just super cool. Not only that, because this is also angled for the desk itself, it matches with one another, at least in terms of the angle of the display. So I was just reviewing the footage on the iPhone here, and I guess you really do have to take a closer look because there's an extra H in Macintosh. I have never noticed this up until now, and that just makes this sticker even more interesting and hilarious. And as for the Dell display here, I think it'll actually make sense to have it right on top here as a secondary panel, just because why not? Now, the use case for the Samsung is obvious. As for the Dell display, I'm not entirely sure yet, but I'm not using this elsewhere. We just have to try it out and see how well it works. Besides, it's always nice to have a secondary display if you can use it with whatever system. So we have the basics of the setup in terms of what displays we're going to use, but we still need to set up a keyboard, a mouse, and the system itself. But we're going to leave that for another time when it comes to actually testing out a system. Today's video was mainly just setting up the desk itself and making it a bit usable. All that remains now is this area right here, which is basically identical to how it was previously, except for the addition of a new power supply. Now, of course, we still have the beige setup on the left, the newer Windows side of things on the right. We actually have our HP ZBook just right there because, well, that's where I'm storing it for now, but we can easily use it on this setup because we have a nice usable surface here. So we have our Windows 10 laptop taken care of, we have our Windows 10 desktop taken care of. The cable management on this area is probably the worst in terms of everything here, and I have made an attempt to make it a bit more reasonable, but it's not going to be perfect, and it's probably going to get even worse once we install more systems here. We're going to need more cables, more accessories. It's not ideal, but then again, when you have multiple PC towers right in front here, it's not like you're going to see all those cables in the first place because they're just going to be in the back. I'm not too concerned with this area right here, but it definitely makes more sense for this section because you can actually see what's going on here. And we also have a new power supply because this is actually a battery-powered backup. This right here is an APC back UPS 675. Now, I've had this for a while, but I've really never made good use of it, at least up until now. If you're wondering why I haven't used it with something like my Mac Mini setup, it just doesn't really work all that well with the setup because it is a bit bulky. Obviously, this does have a battery inside, and even though it would work, the software on this is optimized for Windows. So the Mac Mini side of things is taken care of, but this is nice to have with this system and with really any Windows machine because this can communicate with USB and the software works on Windows 10. I'm sure it'll also work on other versions of Windows, but as it is right now, I've only used it on Windows 10. And in terms of the Optiplex here, you can see we have power, Ethernet, USB. The other USB port is for the Dell keyboard, and because that has a USB hub, we have the mouse plugged into the keyboard. We also have VGA for video, and I've also plugged in some speakers. They are not the most ideal speakers in terms of how loud they can be. They're passive, and they do work. I otherwise wasn't using them, and I figured it would be an okay addition for the area here. But in general, we have the Optiplex setup, we have the APC setup. The nice part about this is that we also have room for the outlets here. So as you can see, we have the 90 speakers plugged in, and even though it's a big wall adapter, we still have plenty of room for all the other cables here, and we do still have 3 additional outlets. So here it is with the Dell Optiplex, how it should be, and we can go ahead and power the system up, which has Windows 10, which has recently been classified as end of life, but you know what? It still works. Well, what do you know? This is a new pop-up that I've not seen yet. Let's get you backed up and ready for Windows 11. Your PC isn't currently backed up. It's the perfect time to back up your data and explore Windows 11 PCs. They're faster, safer, and built for the future. No. Sign in with a Microsoft account. A Microsoft account can be used to securely store your files and data across multiple devices. 5 gigabytes of free... 5 gigabytes? What is this? 2011 iCloud again? Remember your favorite apps. All your favorite apps are available on a new device you sign into. Remember your preferences. Your settings will be available to restore on a new device you sign into. Secure your account. Use your phone to sign into your account so you never lose access to your data. Now this is a certified opt-out of backup moment. Wow, backup is recommended. You get 5 gigabytes of free cloud data with your Microsoft account. They really want you to back up your data. Protect your files if anything happens to your PC. Get options to help stay secure. Easily move to a new PC anytime. Yeah, skip for now. And what do you know? We're at the desktop. But I thought all Windows 10 PCs were gonna explode. Isn't that crazy how that works? Anyways, Windows 10 aside, we do still have this awesome setup that is just waiting to be used, but We just need to get to this point because we need more PC towers. Now, I know I'm saying that we still need to get to this, we still need to get to that, we have to set this up. I got a lot of systems that I really just need to actually start making use of. We still need to clean them up and in some cases install additional hardware. It's just going to take me a while to do, but it's going to be super awesome once we get to that point. And this new desk setup is just going to make it a whole lot easier because if we have everything ready to go, we can just install a system, set it up, and we can either leave it here for the time being or set it up over here or maybe even over there. As for this area on the left with the HP monitor and all of those software CDs and other components, yeah, it's a mess, but it's honestly not super severe because the speakers are actually for the HP monitor and we just have the external Seagate hard drive there, a couple of iPods, and of course the software CDs. Now, I'm not going to deal with this right now because, one, I kind of don't feel like dealing with this, and two, there's a lot we can improve with this area alone, but I'm still moving stuff around, trying to find better spots and optimize everything. So it's not super essential right now, but once we get to the point where we start using the beige setup more, this area is also going to need a good overhaul, maybe change stuff up to make it even better than how it is right now. And with that, I think we're at a good point to wrap up today's video here. If you enjoyed it, then consider leaving a thumbs up, and if you want to see even more awesome content about the new setup, retro hardware, whether it be Mac, PC, basically anything as awesome as this, then consider subscribing. This has made the setup a million times more awesome and interesting because, I mean, this is era-appropriate hardware in pretty much every way possible. As always though, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.